This week, we have covered the opening of several new medical cannabis businesses.
And Kelsey is asking, what is the difference between a cultivator and a processor? Well, here's Victor Puente with the answer to that good question.
Those businesses play two different roles in Kentucky's medical cannabis industry. There are a few others along the way. At the beginning of that process, you have cultivators. Those are essentially the farmers. You won't see any fields growing that product. According to Kentucky's Office of Medical Cannabis, a cultivator license authorizes its holder to grow medical cannabis in an enclosed, locked facility. They can then sell that product to a processor, a producer, or a dispensary in Kentucky. Processors are the next step on that line. In Kentucky, they're allowed to process raw plant material into medical cannabis products. The acceptable forms include edibles, oils, tinctures, vapes, and raw plant material. Now, Kentucky law doesn't actually allow people to consume raw plant material by smoking, so that is supposed to have a label on it saying not intended for consumption by smoking. Up next, you have producers. Those are businesses that are allowed to both grow and process raw plant material. Safety compliance facilities test samples of medical cannabis to make sure it's safe for use in Kentucky. Finally, we have dispensaries. A dispensary license lets a business sell medical cannabis products to registered patients, designated caregivers, and visiting qualified patients. Also, dispensaries can only sell medical cannabis that has been tested and was bought from one of those other licensed cannabis businesses that I mentioned. If you have a good question, just email us. Good question at WKYT.com. I'll see you on WKYT Mornings.